have a ready recollection of what He's prepared. Let it sink into our hearts and our souls, and let's use it for His intended purpose. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Good morning. It's good being able to come and to teach y'all today. I know it's been about a year since I've done it before, and back then I wore sunglasses, whereas I'm proud to say to you today, I had surgery on both eyes and I have 20/20 vision.
Amen.
So I'm wearing these glasses just because I paid so much for them. But a couple of weeks ago on Wednesday night, Patrick came to me and says, "Hey, can you teach on Samuel?" So today we're going to be learning something about Samuel. And when he said that, he said, "What do you know about Samuel?" And I held my tongue. I didn't answer. But the whole time I'm thinking, as much as you know about hair gel. So. Can you hear me now? Okay, not really. How about now? How about now? People in Hiram can now hear me now. So, yeah. Samuel, interesting prophet. He was a prophet and a judge over Israel during a time of turmoil and a time of rebellion. Kind of reminds you of America today, only it was Israel back then. They had enemies that were constantly wanting to fight with them. Most of their citizens there had turned to serve idols and other gods, kind of like America today. They wanted government like the other kingdoms around them had. They wanted a king. It wasn't good enough that God was their king and that His commandments are what they were judged on, and their relationship with their God, they wanted to be like the rest of the world, like America today. So along came this lady that back in those days, her name was Hannah, and Hannah was one of the wives of a man. They had back then polygamy was prominent, so they had more than one wife. So she was a wife, but she was barren. She could not give children, and she wanted so desperately to have children that she would go to the temple and she would pray to God that if you give me a son, I will give him back to you. And so God heard her prayer, and she had a son. And when that son was weaned by his mother, he was then given over to the temple where the prophet and judge Eli was the one who was the priest at that time there. And he was raised by the prophet Eli. Okay? Now back in those days, there was a lot of turmoil going on. And we read in 1 Samuel 1:28 about her giving that giving her son to Eli. Now, later on, we learn about Eli, which this class is not about. In fact, this class is not going to be about Eli, Saul, David, even though they're all in the book of 1 Samuel. And it's pretty easy to find about Samuel. If you go to 1 Samuel, you'll find all about him. Samuel, under Eli, he grew, and as the ministries that he was giving him in serving the Lord in Shiloh. Okay? And chapter 3, we look and we see that God gives the boy Samuel a prophecy. Okay? The tell of that is that they were asleep, both he and Eli in one room and Samuel in another. And Samuel's woken from a dream by somebody calling his name. So he gets up and he runs into Eli, goes, "Yes, here I am, Lord. What do you want?" And he said, "I didn't call you." And so they go back to sleep. Again, he hears the voice. Again, he runs into Samuel. Goes into Eli, excuse me. Now, Eli, after a couple of times doing that and getting woke up, he tells him, he says, "No, that's not me that's calling you. It's the Lord that's calling you. And next time, when you hear that voice, answer. Here I am." And the Lord will tell you what prophecy He wants you to prophesy on. And sure enough, Samuel goes. He is there. He's asleep. He hears Samuel, and he said, "Here am I, Lord." And the Lord tells Samuel of what's about to take place, that because Eli's family his sons had blasphemed the Lord, and that Eli didn't do anything about it, and as a result, the Israelites were in different battles with the Philistines, the Amalekites, you name all their enemies that surround them, kind of like the Middle East is today, where everybody's ganging up on Israel. Well, that was the way it was then, too. And during that time, he said, the Lord said to Samuel that I'm going to replace Eli with you. So Samuel was going to become the head priest there. But everything that happens in Samuel doesn't happen instantaneously. When he said, "I'm going to replace with Eli with you," what happened soon after that was that here comes the Philistines and the Moabites and all of the enemies of Israel are engaged in a war with Israel. And at that time, Samuel was a grown man by then and had children of his own, and he had sons, and they were leading the armies against the Philistines. And so they go out into battle, and they got beat, and a bunch of them died, about 10,000 of them, I think it was, that died. And then they turned around, and they came back, and they said, "Oh, I know what we'll do. We'll get the Ark of the Lord, and we will take it to battle with us. And with that Ark of the Lord, we're going to go out and destroy our enemies." Even though these people that were saying that were worshiping idols, and they were all around worldly people instead of being holding to God's commandments. Okay, so they take the Ark of the Covenant up to the Philistines, and the Philistines rout them and kill about 40,000, and the Philistines captured the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, they had the Ark of the Covenant, and when they came back and sent word to Eli that the Ark of the Covenant had been lost to the Philistines, and Eli the prophet he was sitting in a chair, and he was blind, he couldn't see. The way it sounds in the reading is that he must have been very heavy, out of shape. He fell out of his chair, broke his neck, and died. Okay? So that's how Eli came, and the reason why and how his downfall was because his sons were blaspheming God. Now, the Israelites, God had intervened on their behalf by cursing the Philistines. It caused all kinds of problems with the Philistines until finally the Philistines says, hey, we want to get rid of this Ark of the Covenant because it's killing us and we've had enough. So what should we do with it? So they devised a plan to take it back into Israel and drop it off and get out of there and be done with it. And so the Ark of the Covenant was recovered by the Israelites, and Samuel became the judge and prophet over Israel. Now, that's not the only thing. You think that's a great story right there about Samuel, but it's not the only story, because it wasn't long after this that the people of Israel came up to Samuel and they told Samuel, hey, we want a king. You know, you guys that are judging over us, we didn't elect you, anoint you king. You know, we want our own earthly kingdom, just like all the countries around us. And so Samuel says, well, I will go and I will talk to God about that. And God told him, give them a king. If that's what they think they want. But Samuel goes back to him and says, look, the Lord says that you can have a king, or that you're going to get a king. But before you decide you want to do that, we want you to know what that king's going to do. He's going to take your sons. He's going to put them in the military. Some of them are going to be operating chariots, some spears, some arrows and bows, and they're going to fight battles, and you're going to lose your sons. He's going to require the best of your crops. He's going to require the best fields, the best cattle, the best whatever. That's what the king is going to claim. And you're going to be indebted to the king. And they say, okay, that's fine, we'll do that. So kind of like when you vote for the wrong person here in America, you got what you deserved, all right? So here comes, so Samuel is told by God to go out and to find the king, and he told him where to go, and he went to where the family of Saul was, and God told him that is one of those sons that's going to be the king, the first king. So they came by and paraded by, and Samuel was thinking, well, Lord, is it this one? No, it's not that one. And they went on through the sons until they got to one that was taller than the rest, better looking than the rest, you know, just outstanding looking person. That was the king. That was Saul. Okay? Now, you think, well, all right, well, they got the good-looking guy. They elected the good-looking guy now. So maybe he's going to be taller than the rest of them, and he's going to be just right there, and we can just really rally behind him. But it wasn't long after that, when he anointed him king, that Saul started getting the big head. Okay? He's going out and he's winning battles for Israel, and he's going through the countryside, and he's thinking, well, you know what? I'm going to have some statues of me put up, and and I'm going to offer up burnt offerings to God, and it's kind of cut out the middleman of those priests doing it in the temple. So he set up altars, wherever he was going, and he was offering sacrifice himself, totally in disobedience of God. So God tells Samuel, he says, Samuel, that Saul's no longer going to be king. And so he is not the chosen king, and I'm going to replace him with another king, and I want you to go find him. So you think, well, okay, now we've gotten through that other major event that happened during Samuel. But then he goes and he's searching. They said, go to Bethlehem, and you'll find the house of Jacob that your new king is going to be. So Samuel goes. He finds the family. He starts reviewing the sons, and God's telling him, no, not this one, not this one. And so he went through all of those sons, and then so he said, well, I can't find one. And then the father, Jesse, he finally tells him, well, I do have one more son. He's out here with the sheep. He's tending the sheep. And so Dad was thinking, well, this kid's my, illegitimate stepson or whatever you want to call him. He's not the prize of the flock. The Bible described him being ruddy and not comely and all that stuff. So Samuel says, that's the king. So he appoints David to be king. All right, and then David is king, but Saul is also king. Saul hadn't given up the throne. He's still in charge. So it come about that because of that, there was great strife, and about the rest of the whole book of 1 Samuel is all about Saul trying to kill David. Okay, so that kind of fades Samuel out temporarily. Okay, it was to the point to where it's major. These two kings, a wannabe king or a appointed king, to want to still remain king, and they're doing things together all during the book. And then Samuel dies, and he's buried. And when he dies, after that, there's really quietness as far as not much being revealed by God during that time. It's all about Samuel and David, the rest of that book. So, but there's always another story of Samuel. And that other story of Samuel was that whenever Saul was getting defeated so badly because he was not supposed to be the king, he was still being disobedient to God, he was being defeated, the Israelites were being defeated throughout the country. Then, so Samuel, instead of going to God and repenting to God, he gets one of these psychic mediums. I'm sure if you watch any kind of TV shows now, there's going to be a psychic medium show somewhere on there. You can watch it 24/7 if you want to on some of the cable channels. But he goes to this medium and he says, I want to find out, or he tells, he's thinking to himself, I want to find out from Samuel what I need to do so I can win these battles. Here I'm not obeying God, but every time I was obeying God, I was doing so well. So instead of going to God and finding out what was going, what he could do, he gets this psychic medium, and she conjures up Samuel from the dead. I guess that's the only time that I know of in the scriptures where one of the prophets was raised from the dead. But he was actually called up. It also gives us an idea of that there is life after death, proof positive, because Samuel comes up, and not only does he comes up, he prophesies immediately. He tells Saul, he said, you and your son this day will be where I am, dead. And Saul and his boys go out and they're battling in the battle, and that same very day they got killed. And that ushered in David as the king. Now, that's about Samuel. Let's look for some lessons that we can get out of that. If you'll turn into your Bible, to Matthew, the 12th chapter. And if somebody would read Matthew 12, 6 through 8. Anybody want to read that for me?
Yet I say to you that in this place there is one greater than the temple. But if you had known what this means, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless. For the Son of Man is even on the Sabbath. Is Lord on the Sabbath.
I see that right there was what Samuel was trying to tell them about Saul going around and giving animal sacrifice and not doing it the right way, thinking he's religious and that God's going to help him by making all these animal sacrifices. But what does it say there? That God wanted obedience over sacrifice. That was what, if he had been obedient to God, he would not have fallen. He would have been king. Okay? Also, let's go to chapter 15 of Matthew and look at 8 and 9. If somebody can read that.
This people draw nigh to me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men.
Okay, so it's the doctrine of the commandments, not these flamboyant speakers. Yeah, there's even a guy down in Houston, Texas, that's got satellite churches to where he's preaching to all over the country. They've replaced their pulpit ministers with a TV set up there, and you watch him, called Joel Osteen. And he's a motivational speaker. He's not really a preacher. He's kind of got that preacher drawl to him, like they thought. Everything. I think it makes him more religious sounding, I guess. But he was more like, they're more like that. And so what did it say? That obedience is better than that. These Pharisees, they would have these broad what do they call them? Epithets? Yeah, those things. Big scarves all over. Well, you see it now today, and you see these Catholic priests and other places, you've got those fancy robes on and everything like that. But we don't have it. We don't need it because it's all about God, folks. It's not about it's not so much the act. And so much division is now being brought into the church, the Lord's church. We're not talking about those churches. We're talking about the Lord's church. There's so much division that's coming in of people wanting to add things to make our worship, according to them, more pleasing and more welcoming so people can come in and feel uplifted. And we've got churches that have developed praise teams and they have choirs and we have microphones strategically placed where the good singers are in the congregation and things like that. We have life groups that will come and they will, y'all are going to be in this life group 1 over here, and you're going to have so and so over you. And there's division even amongst those congregations. And the same thing was really going on in Israel at the time of Samuel. They were doing some of the same things. There was factions among them. They weren't united, and they weren't obedient to God. So God had to set them up for some other way of bringing them back to God than what they've been used to. And that's the reason why King David was anointed by Samuel, and he became the king. Now, we know that David was a sinner. He committed adultery with Bathsheba, And you ever notice that in that story, though, that David, when he was lying on his deathbed, who was it that was with him? Woman he had committed adultery with was with him. I guess once you murdered the father, like David did, had him killed in battle, then you get to keep the spoils, I reckon. And I just wonder if using that same logic, does it mean if I go out and rob a bank and I say I'm sorry that I get to keep money? So that's what's really going on here. All throughout the Old Testament, you've got people that are godly people, and you've got the Israelites doing stuff that they shouldn't do. It's just a constant struggle back and forth. The chosen of God. So that's the reason why the Messiah came, so that all men had an opportunity to be in the kingdom, and not those Israelites that kept falling away. And aren't we thankful today that happened? Okay? Samuel was a great servant of God, but his sons too, just like Eli's sons, were wicked. It says that his own sons, were wicked, and they were seeking financial gain and what the power, because Samuel had appointed them as judges in various regions of the country, and they had turned wicked. They had been spoiled by the world. Okay? And we need to understand that just because the mother and father are faithful to God, even though they've got godly parents, that kids can and do leave the church or become sinners. So many times, so many families are torn apart when one of the children leaves and they go join some other religious group or something. In my own family, we were Church of Christ from birth. I mean, I wasn't from birth, but I went to church 2 weeks after I was born, so from then on I've been here. We didn't go, we knew what the Lord has taught, what the Bible teaches, but yet I've got nephews that when they grew up, and they went every Sunday, same church that I went to, same congregation I was part of, they got old enough, they both went in the world. And they turned their back on God, and now a couple of them are even speaking disrespectful things on the church itself. Not just so much of what their denominational people are doing that they know is wrong and what their situation is. They want to blame us as being hypocrites, and that they can go to this place, and those people are not hypocrites. Well, guess what? You go anywhere you want to go to, any religion you want to go to, and you're going to find there's hypocrites there, right? And most of the time when these children leave that's got faithful parents, they leave because they get caught up in a sin. This is a story about Samuel. It's not about that, but Samuel I'm using this as Samuel's examples there of how he went to God and he followed God no matter what. But people today that turn their back on God are just like Samuel's son. Is that because of Samuel? Should everybody just point and say, oh, well, Samuel just wasn't the right kind of person because these people wouldn't have turned out this way? No, we're all free moral agents. Just remember the first man, first woman were sinless in the garden. They didn't sin, but what did they do? They left what they were told not to do, and they disobeyed God. That's what we have to guard against today. Samuel was exhibited great signs of being courageous. How do I know that? Well, I know that whenever God told Samuel that Saul was no longer going to be king, what did Samuel do? He went to Saul and told him, hey, you're no longer going to be king. It's a wonder that Saul didn't put him to death right then, but that wasn't what the story is about. So sometimes we've got to be bold. Sometimes we've got to be like Samuel was, be brave. These people that have turned their back on God, it's up to us sometimes to go to them and say, hey, buddy, here's where you're wrong, and you need to turn your life around, because if you don't, there's going to be a punishment that's going to be great. And a lot of times we just see them as, hey, how you doing, honey? I ain't seen you in a while. Those same people that are in my family, they don't come around on Thanksgiving and around Thanksgiving and Easter, and that's because I cook barbecue for them. But that's the way this world is, and we need to guard ourselves from that. Samuel pointed out that God elevates our hearts and our minds, whereas people see only what we portray to them. Let's turn to 1 Samuel chapter 16. Let's look over there for. In case y'all are wondering what I'm doing up here, my Bible, I have hard times with my hands. They don't work right. So I've got the Bible on the online Bible here, and it's easy for me to go through and look. Okay, that was 1 Samuel 16, didn't I say? Verse 7. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance. This is when he was going and he's judging to find a king, because it wasn't his physical stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord does not see as man sees. For man looks at the outward appearance but the Lord looks at the heart. The example of that I see in here is, y'all see my beautiful figure up here, and you're listening to me as compared to the ruddy one sitting in front of me here. So God doesn't look at our comeliness. He doesn't judge a man by the suit he's wearing. That's why I ain't wearing one. Okay? And despite many challenges and difficulties, Samuel never stopped serving God. And my question to each and every one of you now to think about, did you forget to serve God? Have you forgotten that? Has religion become just one of those mundane things that, if I decide to lay out and go to the NASCAR race today, then what am I forsaking, or I'm going to the Braves game, or you name it. What am I forsaking? I'm forsaking the commandments of God, that on the first day of the week I'm to gather together and to worship Him and to partake of the Lord's Supper. So think about that. Remain faithful unto death. I never intend to leave the Lord. I do not. So no matter what anybody wants to do to me, I am resolved to serve God. And we should all be that way. Okay. Samuel admonished the people sternly about the consequences of rejection of God. 1 Samuel 8. Let's go to 1 Samuel 8. Verses 10 through 22. Somebody like to read that for us?
And Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people to ask of him a king. And he said, This will be the man of the king that shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen. And some shall run before his chariots. And he will appoint you captains over thousands and captains over fifties, and will set them to ear his ground, and to reap his harvest, and to make his instruments of war and instruments of his chariots. And he will take your daughters to be confectionaries, and to be cooks, and to be bakers. And he will take your fields and your vineyards and your olive yards, and even the best of them, and give them to his servants. And he will take the tenth of your seed and of your reward, and give it to his servants. He will take your manservants and your maidservants and your goodliest young men and your asses, and put them to his work. He will take the tenth of your sheep, and you shall be his servants. And ye shall cry out in the day because of your king, which ye shall have chosen you. And the Lord will not hear you in that day. Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, Nay, but we will have a king over us, that we also may be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us, and go out before us, and fight our battles. And Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he rehearsed them in the ears of the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, Hearken unto their voice, and make them a king. And Samuel said to the men of Israel, Go ye every man into his city.
So there you see that Samuel's going to them and he's explaining to them, when you're going to get this guy to be your leader, and you're picking this leader from men and not from God, then be careful what you wish for, because you're going to get it. Is that not like politics that's going on today? You know, the very same things of, we're going to do this, and we're going to grow our own. We're going to make sure that earth is not polluted, and y'all are going to be so much better off, and the world's going to be so much better off. And who are they using to get their agenda done? Your baby boys and girls, that's who they are. That's who they're going to get. I just cringe at the thought of maybe another world war coming. I cringe at that because I got grandsons that could be in it. A granddaughter nowadays that could be in it. We don't have the draft yet, but you get the wrong people in charge, what happens? They didn't ask them if they wanted to be, the bear a sword. They told them. When these thousands of kids are dying out there fighting for a cause, that's really not noble. If you think about it, it's really, if something's going on that is not godly, that we should be away from, we should stay away from, but they're being forced to fight in these wars. And if you look at especially our country, I know more about our country's history than probably anybody else's history as far as in the world. What happened? What happened in the Revolutionary War? A few men wanted to break apart from England and start their own country. So what did they do? They went out and hyped everybody up, and we had the Boston Tea Party. Guess what that is if you fast forward it to 2024? To the river, to the seas, Palestine will be free. By people who aren't even Palestinians. And they don't probably even know what the cause of the Palestinians is, but they're going to go out there and protest it. You know, stop Cop City. You know, stop law and order. These are the evil things that are being put on us now, folks, and these are a real danger, not only to us, but especially our children and grandchildren. And we need to be like Samuel and be stern and tell people, look, here's the consequences. Don't just remain silent. Here's the consequences of having a president that wants to make all people to be on a plateau to where the transvestites will be in charge of the military instead of, when I was growing up and what I read in the Bible, they were supposed to be stoned. You know, instead of stoning them, we make them our military leaders. And it's up to us as a church. Remember, we're the righteous ones. And we're the ones that are supposed to be fighting that good fight at this time. If they kill us, then whoever replaces us, guess what? They're going to get up and do the same thing. Because there's always going to be that. That being said, I'm 3 minutes early. Any questions or comments? Because I've had to talk all this time, and it's time for somebody else.
The reason I asked you about your knowledge of Samuel was I was considering your age. I didn't know if you had conversed with him or.
I had. I do every night. Me and Samuel, we get together. No, you know what I know about Samuel, and this is the difference, and since I got a couple of minutes here. When I was a kid growing up in the church, when you were a kid, we didn't have female teachers women that taught the young boys. We had men that taught the young boys. And they gave us a healthy dose of discipline and the Old Testament. We had to memorize these prophets and what they said. We had to go in there and we would have to come to class on Sunday, and if we were the unlucky one that got pointed out that Sunday, we had to recite that. We went from one Old Testament lesson to another, and I'm sure Brother Bob here can tell you that's probably the way that he learned the Bible, was because we had stern teachers that challenged us to know what the Ten Commandments was, to know who Moses was and the 12 plagues. We had to do that. We had to memorize those 12 plagues. And then later in life, even though we haven't studied them in a while or really applied them, they're still there. We can still pull them up whenever we're old men like Patrick is. You can still remember. So just remember that. It's good talking to you.